This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Okay, so today we are entering Kierkegaard, and this is in my view, this is one of the most profound texts on love. So we are lucky to be studying it. Before I start the text for today, I just want to respond to a couple of your concerns in the reading assignments. These were really good reading assignments. A lot of you had some really interesting things to say, and I want to respond to a couple of you before we get into the actual text. So, first of all, a lot of you were slightly taken aback by his commenting a Christian text, talking about Christian love. And a lot of you were wondering, well, I'm not a Christian, so how does this apply to me? Why should I even read this, right? So remember, Kierkegaard is not writing as an insider, right? Kierkegaard was not a Christian. He was not a Christian until very, very late in his life. He is writing this really, I think I mentioned this in the introductory lecture. Kierkegaard stumbled into Christianity, stumbled on the Gospels, found this text about the life and teachings of Jesus. And in a way, for him, it was a revelation. Right, he had been struggling with love all his life, tried, did not succeed. We know that he was not able to be married. He messed that up. And so later in his life, he stumbles on this text, and he realizes that this text in a way holds the key, the missing link to what he had been struggling with. In a way, he finds in this text a profound teaching, which he's not sharing with us. So it's not so much the Christian aspect of it that interests him, it's the content, right? He realizes, oh my goodness, this teaching is actually very profound, very useful. It's exactly what I needed. So it's not at all, it's a teaching in a way that you don't even have to be a Christian to learn from it, right? He himself, when he stumbles on it, is not a Christian, but he's like, oh, this is very profound. I'm going to hang on to this teaching, right? So when he talks about Christian love, he's simply talking about a way of loving, which he discovered in the Gospels. But this is a universal way of loving. This is a way that we can all adopt, that we can all learn, whether we are Christian or not, right? Again, we don't have to be believers or Christians or anything to be able to learn from this particular text or from the teachings of Jesus. You can learn and adapt, right? So that's the first thing, right? When he says Christian love, he doesn't mean you have to be a Christian. He's talking about a kind of love, which he contrasts, of course, with the poet's love, which is for him the worldly view of love, the popular view of love. So it has nothing to do with being a Christian. It's simply a way of loving, which he is developing here, describing, exploring, which all of us can learn from, which all of us can apply, whether we believe in God or not, right? So hopefully that answers some of your concerns. The other concern was same, kind of similar, but really a really good objection actually, was saying, well, he's studying one very narrow view of love, right? The Christian way of love. So how is that truth, right? In a way, he's just focusing on one cultural aspect, on one religious definition. How can we take what he's saying as a universal truth? And that's a really good question. And it's a very good question that Kierkegaard would be able to answer, because for Kierkegaard, there's no universal truth. He's not interested in universal truth. Kierkegaard, all he is doing in his works, always, he's showing different paths that we could take. And so we saw this in the introductory lecture. I showed there's the path of the player, there's the path of the married man, and now he's talking about the path of the poet, the path of the Christian love, right? So Kierkegaard is only interested in showing us, here's a path we could take among many, and here's where this path has led me. This is where this path can lead you. And if you're interested, go ahead and try it, right? And then here's the other path, right? The path of the poet, which you can also explore. And this is where it will lead you, right? So Kierkegaard is not talking about universal truth. Kierkegaard is talking about a very particular individual truth that he discovered, and he's simply sharing with us and inviting us into that knowledge that he has discovered, right? So he's never going to tell us you have to, this is the truth. There's never any imposition in Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard just lays out different paths, different possibilities, and invites us to explore them on our own. And we can decide, right? Do I want to explore the Christian love path, or do I prefer to explore the path of the player or the path of the married man, right? These are all many different paths that we can explore. So I hope that helps you clarify a little bit, right? He's not telling us how to love. I want to be very clear. Kierkegaard is not preaching to us, right? Kierkegaard is saying, I discovered this path. and I'm inviting you in, right? And you can come or not. It's up to you, right? Really, Kierkegaard is just, this whole book is simply an invitation, right? It's not an imposition. I want to be very clear about that. Okay, but those were really good critiques. We had some angry papers. Those are my favorites because they're very interesting to read. Okay, any questions before we go further on what I just said? Anything you want to clarify in more? And you can raise your virtual hand or just jump in. I can still see you right now. I don't know how long this will last. Okay, let's get into the text. Today I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to, at least this first hour, I'm going to talk about two things, and then I'll go into the second hour. But in this particular text, we're going to talk about the fruit of love and the source of love. So first thing we notice when we enter the first text that we were supposed to read, where's my book? Here. Is that Kierkegaard, in a way, he's starting with a teaching, right? With a very ancient teaching by Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. So I'm just going to read that. This is on page 23. And this whole chapter will be a commentary on just that one sentence that Jesus utters. And this is this on page 23. For each tree is known by its own fruit. For figs are not gathered from thorns, nor are grapes picked from a bramble bush. Okay, so he's here comparing love to a tree, or the lover to a tree. We are trees, right? And so he's saying, in a way, if the act of loving is like a tree growing, we have much to learn from nature. And we ought to look at how a tree functions to see how we are going to function as lovers. The best lover is the one that is most tree-like, right? So that's the first thing he's going to do. So first thing we're going to learn is we're going to look, there's two aspects to a tree. There's the fruit giving aspect of the tree. And then complementary to that, there's the root system, which digs into a deeper source of nourishment, right? So I'm going to start with the fruit, love as fruit. And I want to start here on page 29. So first thing, I'll summarize and then we'll get into the actual quote. So first thing that Kierkegaard is saying here is that we need to switch a little bit our view of love. If you recall Agathon from Plato, right? Agathon was all about love is to be loved. That was his theory, right? He's displaying himself, if you remember, he's putting himself on display so that people will love him. And this is really what most of us are doing, especially in our culture. Our culture is a culture of display. We have to display. I mean, we are a culture of apps where we are displaying a profile, right? We are here in our profile displaying all of the qualities that we have with what goal, so that someone will respond and love us and find us desirable. So we are truly in a culture, not so much of fruit as it is a culture of foliage, of display, right? We are longing to be noticed and to catch somebody's attention and to be swiped. I don't know if it's left or right, one of these, right? We are longing to be swiped. And we do everything to catch, right, the attention of others. So we are really most in this particular culture, and all of us are influenced by this, of course. We see love as being loved, as getting love. We are looking to find love so that we can have this in our lives. And Kierkegaard here is going to flip it. So make sure you write this down, right? He's going to flip the definition of love from I want to be loved to love is not to be loved. To find love is to give love, right? So it's not about finding love, it's about giving love. We in this culture are looking for love, and Kierkegaard is saying you don't need to look for love, just offer love and you will be in a state of love, right? So he's saying we need to remember that ultimately the highest form of love is the ability to give of yourself, to bear fruit, right? It's not about taking, it's about giving. And I think I mentioned this before, right? I think I don't know which context, but I don't know if I mentioned this story, but I had a student come to me at one point to visit me, and he was struggling. He was dating someone, and he wasn't sure if she was the right person for him. So he was saying, she has this, but she doesn't have that, and I wonder if it'll be right, or maybe I'll change and I'll need something else. That happens eventually. I get older and she's not satisfying me anymore and we part ways and we're too different and she doesn't fulfill me. And I said, listen, you got to stop right now. You will never, never be ready to marry as long as you see love like this as what's in it for me? What do they have? How do they fulfill me? As long as you're thinking along the lines of, does that person fulfill me? You're not ready. It's not yet mature. The mature is you're thinking now, how do I fulfill them? What am I offering to them? What is my responsibility towards them? What do I sense I can bring into their lives? Am I, in other words, it's not about thinking, are they the right fit for me, but am I the right fit for them? Right? What do I have to offer them? And do I have something to offer that I believe they need? So he's flipping it, right? And I think that's a very profound moment when you can shift from thinking, you know, do they fit me, to do I fit them? Right? You have reached the next level. You are ready now for some deeper commitment, right? Um, so that's the first thing we realize, right? Love is not about being loved; it's about loving, and so forth. So let's go deeper into what that means exactly, right? Because he's talking here about feelings, and he's saying feelings is not enough, right? We need works. That's one of the main ideas of the text, right? Feelings are not enough. We need works. So let's look into that. Go to page 29. And tell me when you get to the middle of the page, there is a little footnote 7. If you're there, can you wave at me? That's where I'm going to start reading, right? And just wave at me when you're there. There's a little footnote 7 right in the middle of the page. Okay, I don't see anyone. Yes, okay, thank you, Philippe. I see only 3 people right now. Okay, so I'm going to read right now. So Kierkegaard begins, unlike Kant, he's not against feelings, right? He says you should not be ashamed of your feelings. Feelings are great. And still less honesty of giving to each one his due. So sharing the feelings, telling them you love them, right? Nevertheless, he says, one should not love in word and with devices of speech, and neither should one regard them as sure marks of love. In other words, the fact that you said I love you, or that they said I love you, this is just the beginning. This is not the end. He continues, on the contrary, by such fruits, and then he catches himself, or by their being merely leaves, one should know that love has not had time to grow, right? So in other words, the feelings is the beginning, but it's not the end, right? The feelings eventually need to be replaced or need to grow into fruits. The feelings need to bear fruit. There needs to be works. There needs to be, in other words, you can't just love someone with feelings. You have to also love someone with actions. That's the idea here. Right? Feelings are not enough. Actions have to follow, right? And that's what he means by fruits. Let's go deeper into what those actions look like. Last paragraph on 29. It is said of certain plants that they must form hearts. The same must be said of a man's love. If it is really to bear fruit and consequently be recognizable by its fruit, it must form a heart. In other words, your feelings are great, but really they have a deeper purpose than just make you feel good. Feelings are there to shape us into a good lover, right? I don't know if you noticed this, but when you first fall in love, you become a nicer person in general, right? You're so happy, you're in good mood, you're nice to everyone, you're kind of glowing. And this is the golden opportunity at that moment to become a better version of yourself, right? The feelings are meant to inspire us to become all that we could be. And the feelings can't stop there. They have to bear fruit or they will die, right? And this, I want to stop on that idea briefly, because this is very, very important, because a lot of us have experienced or will experience relationships where after a little while, the feelings start to die, right? You're loving someone, it's great for the first 3 months, and then little by little, you get kind of in a routine, and then the feelings get kind of stale. I see a lot of that word stale in in, um, in your descriptions, right? I'm on page 29, right? So a lot of us, right, end up all of a sudden the good feelings are gone and we're kind of bored with each other, and the relationship is stagnant and we don't know what's happening. There is a key here that Kierkegaard is offering us, which I think is extremely important. Basically, what Kierkegaard is saying is that feelings die if they don't give rise to fruits. In other words, if your tree has leaves but the leaves never become fruits, eventually the whole tree will shrivel up, right? In other words, if your feelings have not brought you into, um, have not shaped your heart, if your feelings have not given rise to works of love, eventually the feelings will die, right? So let me explain. Imagine you have feelings, you're doing great, but you never move to the next level. In other words, you never move into a love which is committed, or you never move into a love which is patient, or a love which is sacrificial. You never really become a better version of yourself. You never really, like in the Song of Songs, we saw the two lovers really are refined by their love. They grow, they mature, they get to the next level, they become better individuals, right? Remember, the woman in the Song of Songs is able to become less possessive, the man is able to commit, so their love is bearing fruit. That is why, because their love has gone to the fruit level, that is why their feelings stay alive, right? And so many times you can ask yourself, you should ask yourself, when the love is becoming stale, what were some fruits that we should have given birth to that we didn't, that we didn't allow ourselves to move to the next level? We didn't let the feeling give rise to fruits. We didn't, the love never gave rise to commitment, the love never gave rise to sacrifice, the love never gave rise to patience, and so forth, right? These are the fruits of love. And so when the fruits don't occur, eventually even the feelings will die. The feelings are, in other words, if your love doesn't move, this is like driving a stick shift. I don't know if any of you ever drove a stick shift, but you always got to move to the next speed, right? If you don't allow your love to progress, if it just stagnates, it's going to die. And so the invitation here is, make sure that you don't stay on the level of feelings. Make sure that your love evolves into fruits, because that is the sure safeguard of the feelings that you don't want to die, right? Filippo, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes. So since you say that like when the feeling becomes sales, what were some fruits that we should have given birth to? Could it also be interpreted that like fruits are also changes that we have to go through, right?
Exactly.
Like
Right.
so they are also like when conflicts arise that can also be viewed as like flowering, which is before fruit comes.
Yeah, the very nice. The conflict is the bud, right? Is the possibility of fruit, right? Conflict is necessary before you have any growth. I believe that, right? A love with no conflict is a love with no growth, right? So, but then it's how you deal with the conflict. Does the conflict push me to become a better version of myself? Does the conflict push me to broaden my view of who I am, of who, who the what the relationship should be, and so forth? So yes, absolutely, the conflict is the prerequisite, the preludes to the fruit, and that's why we should pay attention to the conflicts, because they are opportunities for fruit. Right? Very nicely put, Filippo. Anybody else have any comments on this notion of fruit and feelings? Okay. Okay, good. So that's the first thing we learned here, right? This notion of, very important to, so two things I want you to remember, right? The importance of flipping our definition of love, right? This is not about, love is not about being loved. Love is about loving, right? It's very important to shift from, are they good for me, to, am I the one for them, right? It's not anymore. The question you should be asking yourself is not, are they the one for me? Like, like the three speeches, right? Aristophanes, Pausanias, Agathon, we're all asking, are they the one for me? The question one should ask is, am I the one for them? Do I feel a calling to love this person? Do I feel a calling? Do I feel like I have what it takes to love them well? Do I feel called, in effect, to love them, and to love them and to carry them through life, right? So that's the shift that Kierkegaard is inviting us to do. And then the second shift is from feelings to fruits. It's very important for the love to evolve. If the two lovers in the Song of Songs had remained the same, had not allowed the love to transform them, their love would have died. It's because they allowed their love to bear fruit. They allowed the crucible of conflict and of pain to give rise to a transformed version of themselves, to their highest selves. And that is why their love became as strong as death. The feeling remained as powerful at the end, more powerful in the end than it was in the beginning. That is the sure safeguard of the feeling, is to move into the fruits, into the works of love. Okay, so now we go into the second part, which is source. So it's all very beautiful, right? This idea of feelings, fruits. We ought to think of the other. We ought to think of bearing fruit. That is the main thing we should be thinking about: how to love the other, how to love well. What can I offer you? What am I called to be in your life, and so forth. But there are moments where, what about us, right? What if we are in a partnership where they don't have that calling? What if we're in a partnership where they're not bearing fruit? And here we are by ourselves bearing fruit, getting more and more tired of bearing fruit, of doing, of helping, of changing, and the other person is never changing, never offering love, and we are all by ourselves in a desert, never receiving the nourishment that we need, right? We feed them our fruits, but they do not feed us. And so what happens in this situation where we are bearing fruit and they are not? That's the next point. Okay, make sure you write this question down, right? What happens in a situation where I am bearing fruit, I am nourishing my lover, but they are not bearing fruit in return? They are not understanding that they need to change. They're not understanding that I need to be loved a certain way. They don't see their role in my life. And so what happened? They don't see that I need certain things from them in order to feel loved, right? And so what happens in these moments when the person simply maybe doesn't know how to love, maybe is going through something, maybe has never been taught how to love, right? And here I am by myself loving. What happens in this moment? So Kierkegaard is going to reveal something very interesting in this moment. Basically, one of the ideas of being a tree, right, is that even if it doesn't rain, you're okay. That's the interesting idea of the tree. Why is that? Why is it that even if it doesn't rain, the tree is okay? Anybody know? Yes, Soto, and then George, and then Kogan. Everybody has something to say. Okay, go ahead, Soto.
I'm going to go with the roots and that, even when it doesn't rain, it has stored up, nourishment in its roots. It has stored up that energy. So, in the sense of Kierkegaard, one could say that, you can store up that love, you can store up that energy. Yeah.
Okay, good. So there's a strong root system. I want to know what this root system actually means. This is a metaphor, right? What does it look like concretely, right? George, what can you tell us?
Oh, I was gonna say the same thing, that it stores, like even if it doesn't rain, it stores the love, or I mean, it stores its nutrients and whatnot. And maybe it could be the same way in terms of love, that even if there's not a day where things aren't perfect, or you don't necessarily get what you need, you still use what you've been given before to propel you forward and to keep moving, within that relationship.
So you mean, so then maybe they rained in the past a little bit, and so you have that water stored up, and then when they're
Yeah.
not doing so good, you can still, they have some money in their bank still. They're not. They're still giving you a little bit. Okay, good. Kogan, what do you have to say?
No, I was going to say the same thing of you can store food. So if they're not loving you in the way you want to be loved in that moment, maybe you have, strength from previous, acts of love. And if it's been dry for a bit, you can survive off of that love until you get more rain or more actions.
Okay, good. Now, this is all true, except Kierkegaard is going to go in a slightly different direction, right? He's going to talk about there's a root system and there's a source. But for him, because he's so keenly aware that human beings can never fully nourish us, right? He's going to situate this source in a different realm than the beloved, right? It's not going to be our lovers who have rained on us, and right, this source is going to be situated in a completely separate dimension, which has nothing to do. So in a way, you can live in that context 20 years with someone who doesn't rain and you can be fine. Right? So let's look at this, because this is intriguing. And if there is really such a source apart from the lover, it can be actually a very powerful discovery, right? So let's look here on page 26. Where he actually begins to talk about the source. So go to the second section, Love's Hidden Life. And right there, I'm going to read From Whence Comes Love. Okay, page 26, the second section. So I'm reading. From whence comes love? Where does it have its origin and source? Where's the place, its stronghold from which it proceeds? Okay, so here he's already hinting, right, that love doesn't necessarily come from the lover, right? That our source is not necessarily nourished at the contact with the other, right? So this is interesting. So continuing, certainly this place is hidden, or is in that which is hidden. And then he goes and gets more specific. There is a place in a human being's most inward depths. From this place proceeds the life of love. Okay, so now he's saying that this source is not only is not connected to the other person, but it's within me. In other words, what he's saying, so make sure you jot this down, that within me, there is this unfathomable, profound source of love in which I can tap, right? I can tap into which I can tap and receive when needed the nourishment, the nutrients, the strength that I need. And so I want to read a little bit more, and then I want to really ask about this because this is not obvious. So I'm going to read a little bit more on that, page 27, second paragraph. He goes a little further. He says, the hidden life of love is in the most inward depths, unfathomable, and still has an unfathomable relationship with the whole of existence. So he's saying now this source is connected to the whole of existence, right? And then he goes further. He says, as the quiet lake is fed deep down by the flow of hidden springs which no eye sees, so a human being's love is grounded still more deeply in God's love. So he's calling it God, but there's other ways also that he calls it. I'm going to write down these other ways. Hold on, I'm finding the chat here. So he calls it God, but we don't have to call it God. In another passage, he calls it eternity. Other philosophers he calls it also the whole of existence, right? So clearly, he's hinting here at a dimension beyond just the dimension of life, where we are living with the different people, interacting with people, we're getting nourished from people or not. This is one level of existence. This is one dimension of existence. He's alluding here to a deeper level of existence, which he calls God, eternity, the whole of existence. Other philosophers have called this the mystery or being, right? There's a deeper layer that we can connect to, right? Which can nourish us and give us the strength. And this dimension, he says, this layer, this source is found within us. So I want to stop on that because this is intriguing. Because honestly, if you think about it, I mean, when I think, most of us, if we're in a difficult relationship, we don't feel anything with it. We feel tired, depleted, drained. We feel angry, right? Resentful. Like when I check, right? When I'm in a relationship with someone who's not raining enough, I don't see this source right away, right? When I look within, all I'm seeing is I'm tired, I'm drained, I'm depleted, I'm angry, I'm resentful, I'm sad, I'm sorrowful, I'm anxious. This is what I'm seeing, right? And so I don't see necessarily what he's talking about, right? What is this source that I can tap into? Now, if it is true though, that there is really such a dimension, then it's an absolutely extraordinary discovery, because I want to know if there's really a dimension I can tap into when everything is going wrong around me. If I can tap into this dimension and find nourishment and peace and love and so forth, then I want to know about it, right? But I don't see it, I don't feel it, right? And most of you, if you check, you're gonna be like, yeah, I don't see it either. Where's the source? How do I tap into it, right? So if Kierkegaard is right, and we haven't established that yet, right? We don't know yet if he's right. He hasn't argued for this. He's just saying this, right? We need to have some kind of, we need to go deeper with this. But if he is right, then the $1 million question is, how do I tap into this source? Okay, let me say that again so you can write it down. So if Kierkegaard is right, which we haven't established yet, but if he is right, that there is really a dimension within myself beneath the resentment and the anger and the depletion and the tiredness and the weariness, if there's really a deeper level that I can tap into to receive strength, nourishment, wisdom, love, joy, peace, right? If there's really such a dimension, the $1 million question is, how do I tap into it, right? And the answer to that question, we are going to find in the next text. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into this second text. And this is where we're going to find, in my view, the secret to tapping into this source. And we're going to find out that He's not going to, have a microscope and be like, here's the source. No, this is, he will tap into it through a certain attitude, a certain experience can bring us to this source. And so we're going to do this. Now, before I go any further, any questions before we take a quick break on Kierkegaard? Okay. All right, it's exactly 3:56. I will start exactly at 4, so 4 minutes. So in 4 minutes, we come back and we're going to find out the secret to tapping into the source. So I'll be with you in a bit.
I had
4
a
minutes.
question.
Yes, David, go ahead.
It's still about page numbers. I'm using a PDF, and the PDF has the page numbers of the book itself on the page, but it doesn't seem to match up because I can't find the quotes that you're.
Okay, let's talk after class about this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a little technical. So
Okay.
can't help you right now. There's too much going on. But after class, we can look and I can show you the message.
Yeah. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right, quick break. 3 minutes left. Okay, let's come back. All right. How many of you are back? Let me see your faces. Please turn on your faces. Singh, Kogan, Corpaz, Jalal, Multani, Delgado, Valladares, Filipu, Romero, Pocrell. Faces, please. Ruiz. I think that's it. Okay. Or maybe I just can't see your faces because I'm half frozen. No, I see a few of you. Okay, good. Let me get back to. Oh my God, how do I do this? Oh yeah, gallery. Speaker view. Okay. All right. So are we ready to learn this extraordinary information, this extraordinary revelation on how we can actually tap into this deeper source so that no matter what is happening outside of us, We can remain grounded, we can remain loving, we can remain ourselves. We don't need to be affected, influenced, pushed around by what is going on outside of us. We can actually remain rooted, right? So this brings us to the second text, right, which is which we're going to go now, which is love hopes all things. So this is on page 31. And we are now in a very different part of the Christian Bible, right? We are in the writings of Paul, who has written, so he was an apostle of Jesus, a disciple of Jesus, and he has written a number of letters to the nascent church, right? He was one of the first founders, the first leaders of the church. And he wrote a beautiful epistle, a beautiful letter to the city of Corinth, which is a city in Greece. And in this epistle, or in this letter, he writes, he has a beautiful section on love. And this is where you have the famous passage which talks about love as being patient and kind. It does not envy. It is not rude. It is not easily angered. And then towards the end, in a climactic moment, he says, love always hopes, always perseveres, always protects. Love never fails, right? So it's a beautiful passage, which you can all read if you want to read the full kind of poetic flow of what he's talking about. You can go to the first epistle of Corinthians, and this is chapter 13, right? This is where he's that's what he's quoting here when he says love hopes all things. So in this particular chapter, we are going to discover one of the most fundamental works of love. Remember, love is about fruits. This is one of the fruits. This is one of the things we can do in order to create love. For Kierkegaard, this is a very different perspective than we have. We think we fall in love or love just happens. For Kierkegaard, love is an art. It's a craft. It's something that we must labor at. It's something that it's a workmanship. The relationship is really something that you have to craft. It's not just a given. The people are given to you, but the relationship, you need to weave and craft and form and shape, and you need certain tools. And one of these tools we're going to learn is hope. Okay, so today we're going to look at that. So right now in the next hour, and what we're going to learn about hope is very interesting. We're going to learn what it is, obviously, but we're also going to see that hope is not just a feeling, it's a force. Hope is not just a feeling, it's also a transformative force. Okay, so make sure you write this down, that for Kierkegaard, hope is not just a feeling, it has power, right? Hope has the power to shift the course of your relationship. Hope has the power to transform very deeply what is going on in the relationship. It is a force, it is not just a feeling. And we're going to see more specifically that hope actually has the power also not only to shift the relationship, but to renew the self from within. So it has both, right? It's an incredibly powerful force which not only renews everything outside, it renews us from within. Okay, so make sure you write this down, right? That hope not only has the power to renew your environment, but first and foremost, it has the power to renew from within. It can renew us from within. And that is what Kierkegaard means by the connecting to the source. Anything that can renew us from within, you are connecting to something that is washing over you, that is cleansing you, that is nourishing you, right? So we're going to see that hope in a way is going to be a bridge between our current situation and this deeper source. We're going to look at that. So, okay, so let's go into this powerful hope, which for Kierkegaard is the most powerful weapon in our arsenal or the most powerful tool in when we're desiring to craft a relationship, to create a lasting relationship. Hope is going to be the magic sword or the magic wand, right? that we need in this particular context. So we need to understand very profoundly what it means to hope. So let's look. So I'm going to look at two things. Never mind, I'm just going to go straight into the definition. Okay, so we have a definition here on page 237. So let's go there now. And I am in the second paragraph where he says, this is what it means to hope all things. So page 237, second paragraph, wave at me when you're there. I'm just waiting to see a couple of waves. Okay, thank you, Suresh. Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to go very slowly in this definition. We're going to understand every part of it so we can really learn to put it into practice. So he says this is what it means to hope all things. But in love, to hope all things signifies the lover's relationship to other men. Okay, first thing we learn is that hope is a work of love. If you love, you hope. If you hope, you love. Right? So there's no, if you're hopeless, you have lost already the dimension of love. You have lost your love if you become hopeless, right? So to cultivate hope is actually the sure sign of love. So we're going to look at that. And hope, so that's the first thing we learn. And second thing we learn, hope is relational. Hope is a way to connect. Hope is not just an inner feeling. It's not just a private wish. It's relational. It's a connecting force. Okay, so we need to continue. Then he says this. Signifies the lover's relationship to other men, that in relationship to them, now here's the next part, hoping for them, he continually keeps possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. Okay, that's kind of a convoluted sentence, which we are going to parse right now. First thing we see, to hope is to hope for them. Okay, what does that mean, and how does it look very different from wishful thinking? How is hope different from wishful thinking? When it says here to hope for someone, what does it mean to hope for someone? So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about that. Are you hearing the planes? That's my life. Okay. All right, Davidov, go ahead.
So my interpretation of it is kind of comes from an external source. There's this guy, also a philosopher, Jonathan Sachs, who says that hope isn't the same as wishful thinking, because hope is a refusal to be comforted, because you have a vision for the future that you want to see, and so you refuse to kind of sit still until that future is realized. And so, and within this context of a relationship, if you're hoping for somebody, then you actually want something for that person, and you're going to work to achieve it rather than just sitting and kind of like resigning yourself to what reality is like in the present.
So I'm curious. So that's an excellent definition. I'm going to repeat it in a second, but I want to understand, how is wishful thinking not a vision for the future? I'm curious. What is the difference? Because you're wishing, right? So what's the difference? Can you elaborate on that?
For me, I think wishful thinking is a vision for the future, but it's passive. You're just sitting in the same place, and you're kind of projecting a vision that you want onto the future, but you're hoping that vision comes to you rather than trying to fulfill it yourself.
Oh, very good. Okay, so let's write this down. I like what you said. What is the author? Can you put in the chat for all of us so we can read this person? The first thing I'm seeing, that hope is active. Wishful thinking is passive. Make sure you write this down. Passive. Wishful thinking, you're just sitting there. I wish, when you wish upon a star, right? You're just sitting, looking at the sky, right? This is different. This is active. There is an activity. We're going to look at that activity, right? Oh, Jonathan Sachs. Okay, what's the title of the book, Davida? That looks like I think I know the author. Please put in the chat the title.
Yeah. Also, it seems like I can only text you privately in the chat. I don't know how to send messages to everyone.
Oh, let me write it down for everyone. And just put everyone. Okay, so this is Jonathan Sachs. That's the author, and then you can type the name of the book, and I'll type it for everyone too. When you send it to me. Okay, so very good. So first thing you guys can write down, right? Wishful thinking is passive. You're just sitting, wishing. And then hope, on the other hand, is active. Let me write here the book name for everyone, which I think I will read also. Why not? Always good to learn. The Great Partnership is the title of the book. Okay, great. Now, second thing, hope has a vision. Now, this is interesting because we're going to talk about that. Hope is a vision, actually. Hope is a way of seeing. We're going to look at that. So hope is a vision for the future. And of course, you specify that you have this vision of the future, not for yourself, but for the other or for the relationship. So instead of sitting here, right, hope is not sitting in the relationship and being like, I wish you would change, right? So I can feel happier. Right? I wish you would do this so I could be better. I wish you would do this. I wish you would change that. Hope is not about yourself. That's wishful thinking. I wish. Hope when it's love, right? When it's a work of love, hope in the sense of Kierkegaard, is you're hoping for the other, meaning you are seeing you're hoping for them. It's about them. It's not about you. You're hoping, and then we're going to see a little further what that means, right? But for now, it's important to realize hope is turned towards the other. It's not turned upon oneself. Now let's see, what is hope seeing? So I will read here, same passage. He continually, mind the word continually, this never stops. You never stop hoping. He keeps the possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. So Kierkegaard here talks about being partial. So first of all, we need to define, what does it mean to be partial? Who can tell me the definition of when you're partial to someone, what are you doing? When you're partial to something or partial to someone, what are you actually doing? Can anyone give me the definition so we can move forward? What does it mean to be partial towards somebody? Kogan, go ahead.
It's not objective, like to show favoritism.
Okay, very good, right? So when you're partial, if I'm partial to you, Kogan, I'm going to show favoritism. I'm going to give you a good grade, even if you don't deserve it. I'm going to put an emphasis. I'm going to look at you more than I look at others, right? Now, that's what he's saying here. When you're hoping, he says, you are partial to their possibility of the good. In other words, you're looking more at the good they could be than at the bad that they are right now. Okay, let me say that again. To be partial here for Kierkegaard means that you're leaning in, you're focusing more on the good of that person, what they could become, the good that they could become. You're focusing more on that than on the bad things they're doing right now. That's what he means when he says it's an infinite partiality for the possibility of the good, right? It's not there yet. You don't see that good. That person is a jerk, right? They're treating you like, like trash. You're not seeing the good, but you're able to see the possibility of the good. And that is what you focus on. So let me define everything together. Hope is this, simply, you can translate. Hope is for them, but what? When you hope, basically what you're seeing is you're choosing to focus on who they could become rather than focusing on who they are right now. That's hope. Let me say that. I'll write it down in the chat. Hope is choosing, right? It's a choice to focus on who the person could become. So that's what he means by possibility, right? Of the good, rather than focusing on who they are now, right? So the person right now maybe is depressed, or they're jobless, or they're, lying, or they're cheating, or they're doing all kinds of things that are, you want to get out of there so fast, right? And Kierkegaard said, before you get out, there's still something you can do if you choose to, right? Again, Kierkegaard is not forcing us. He's not saying, you have to stay in the relationship no matter what. It's not like Kant, right? Kierkegaard is saying, look, you do what you want, I don't care. But if you want to give this a chance, here's the best way to do it. Hope is going to be a very powerful ally. And so instead of focusing on who they are right now and all of the bad that they're doing right now, you are choosing, it's a vision, it's a gaze, you're choosing to see everything that they could be. Okay, so let's see how this plays out. Let's imagine you are in a relationship with somebody who has a very serious, let's say, addiction problem. Let's go neutral. They have an addiction problem, like maybe alcohol or something, to that effect. It's destroying the relationship, right? Of course, everybody's telling you to leave, which, this is not bad advice, right? But something in you maybe wants to stay and work it out, maybe, perhaps, if you choose, right? You don't have to. And Kierkegaard is saying, hope will help. So what would it look like to hope for them in this situation? I'm curious. Who can give me the way this would look? Yes, Kogan.
Like taking them to AA meetings or getting them in rehab and hoping that they can better themselves.
Okay, careful. Hope is not doing things, right? It's different. He's not saying hope is going to, right? It's not about helping them, right? This is interesting. It's not about saying, here, let me show you what to do. Right? And we're tempted, right? When somebody is suffering, we're like, let me show you what to do. So here, there's no action, right? You're not taking action. So what are you doing? Can you refine what you said, Kogan, or can someone jump to Kogan's help? What, it's not about taking them anywhere. It's not about helping them. You're not doing anything here. What are you? What is it that you're? Yes, Davido.
I mean, to be honest, my first answer was going to be Abby's answer, but to try to refine it, so then if that's not the right answer, do you kind of just stay in the background and tell them that you'll be there for them if they need anything? And you
It's
continue
more
to
than
do
being
so?
there, because you can be there and be destroyed, right? So it's, and remember, there's no power in just being there, right? This is different. Remember, he's saying it's an infinite partiality for the possibility of the good, right? Look at what I wrote in the chat, right? Choosing to focus on who the person could become rather than focus. What are you doing? Are you doing anything? What is the action here? It's not taking them to rehab. It's not even talking to them. What is the action here that you're doing based on the definition I gave in the chat? Philippe, go ahead.
Staying by their side.
More
Just
than that, there's more. Soto, help us. Soto.
Staying by their sorry, I was having trouble. Staying by their side, but more than that, like continuing on with your daily routine, continuing on, doing what you normally would do for them. Like, just hoping that they are going to come around and, they are going to lead, they themselves are going to be led to that, opportunity to better themselves.
Okay, you guys are very action-oriented people. It's an audience of Americans. So you guys are action, action characters, action heroes. There's no action, guys. What is the only action that's there? Kogan, help us. Let's see if you've recovered.
Just forgiving them. And
No forgiveness there. Read the thing I put in the chat. What is the only action that's there? Why is no one seeing this?
is it hoping?
Yeah, but what does it mean? Castro, help us. You're muted.
I would say just looking at the only the good parts in them, and like
You got it, Castro. It's a vision, guys. It's simply this. Hope is simply this. You see it. You see it and you speak it. You don't help them. You don't intervene with their lives. You're not either imposing a vision of what they should do, your vision. You're seeing who they truly are. You see the difference? Let me be very clear. Two things you're not doing. You're not helping them, and you're not imposing a vision of how you think they should change. Well, I think you should go to rehab. I think you should do this. I think it's not about doing anything. It's not about solving the problem. It's about seeing who they truly are. Okay, let me say that in the chat. It's about it. So let me write this again. It's not about solving the problem. No. It's about seeing who they truly are. And out of this vision that you have, that you cultivate, that you nurture, that you speak into their lives, they will begin to shift by themselves. You see what you are empowering them. All of the things you said before, you're not empowering them, you're doing for them. You're dragging them to rehab. You have, a clear vision what they should be doing. This is not about doing for them. This is about empowering them. And the most profound way you can empower someone is to see who they truly are and to cultivate that vision and to never stop seeing that in spite of all the evidence to the opposite. And as you cultivate that vision, Kierkegaard is telling us that that person will begin to shift in the direction of that vision. They will become who we see them to be. And at that moment, change is possible from within. Are you following what I'm saying? Wave at me if you're with me. I need to see that. Okay, thank you. So let me be very clear. It's not about helping them. It's not about solving the problem. It's about simply seeing. It's a vision of who they truly are. This is exactly, I'll be with you, Philippe, in just one second. This is what Rumi was saying, right? Remember, we had a poem from Rumi where he talks about to see the ocean in the water jar. Remember, I told you I was going to talk about Rumi when we get to Kierkegaard. We are here. When Rumi says love is seeing the ocean in the water jar, he's saying love is a vision of the extraordinary within the ordinary. In other words, everyone sees the ordinary, or everyone sees the jar, which is just clay, which is maybe broken, which is maybe cracked, which is fragile. That's what people see, but you see the ocean. And as you see the ocean, that ocean one day will break free. right? That's so basically hope is a vision. It's you're sitting, you're not doing a thing. You're just seeing and cultivating that vision. And from that vision, the person begins, in a way, as you see them as who they truly are, they become that. And then change is possible from within. Philippou, go ahead.
I'm a little confused because before in the book, we talked about how hope is choosing to focus on who they could become. So it's like focusing on the potential of they could become, but it is also seeing the vision of the good side of who they are now.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me
Like,
clarify.
are we focusing
Yes.
on the present or like the potential?
Yes, yes, yes. When I say you see who they are, I'm not saying that they are that right now, right? So you are seeing a potential, yes, but you're seeing it as their true essence. You're seeing their truth beneath the behavior that they're exhibiting right now, which is the behavior of an addict, let's say, right? That's who they are right now. You are seeing who they truly are. And that's what he means when he says you're seeing the potential or the possibility. I word it in this way. I say you're seeing them as they truly are, not as they are right now, but who they truly are. Does that make sense?
So it's like seeing the potential as who they are.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. So now some of you might be thinking, huh, what if you're deluding yourself and seeing, right, that they are like that, but maybe you're just imagining it, right? Now Kierkegaard is going to say something very interesting in the next page, so 238. He's going to say, actually, true, you could be deluded in seeing the good in the person, but then he adds, you can also be deluded in thinking they can never change, right? Let me say that again. Yes, you can be deluded in thinking they could change and become who they are, who they truly are. But Kierkegaard says likewise, you can also be deluded into thinking they will never change. So might as well pick pick the right delusion. Pick the right and watch it come to reality. That's what he said. So let's read that here on page 238. I'm on the top. First, go from the top 4 lines, and it begins right there. It is possible. So he's talking about despair and hope now. He's saying, yes, we can also despair of each other, right? There's also, looks like there is no hope. So he says that it is possible, says despair. It is possible that even the sincere enthusiast becomes weary, gives up the struggle, sinks to the service of second rate. It is possible that the deepest believer abandons faith and chooses disbelief. It's possible that the most burning love at some time cools off. So he's saying, yeah, you're right to see that it can go very wrong and that the person might never change. You're right, he says. You're right to think that that person is worthless and that that person has nothing left in them and that that person will never become. He's right. But then he says, it is also possible that the opposite be true. See, we don't know. You see, and so I'm skipping now. Go down a little further. Go down where you see the dash and the big capital yes. Who is there? Wait, I mean, it's just a few lines lower. Okay. Then he says, yes, indeed, this is possible that they will never change and so forth. But then he says, the opposite is also possible. And so what he's saying is that in life, we never have certainties. We only have possibilities. But he's saying, as you pick a possibility, it can become reality. Until you pick it, until you invest in it, it has no chance of becoming a reality. So he's saying, yes, it's possible it doesn't work, and it's possible it does work. And you will never know until you pick a side, right? Until you commit to a possibility, it can never become a reality, right? And this is what's very interesting. So he's saying, this is about realizing that both are possible and choosing to pick the possibility of the good. And in choosing that, he says, there will be a shift. Or not necessarily, but you're actually creating the conditions of possibilities for a shift. We can never be sure what's going to happen, right? But we can put all of the chances on our side. We can create an environment where that can happen, right? So Kierkegaard is not giving us some magic book or some recipe book for love. He's saying, this is all about tending to love. This is all about cultivating love, creating the right environment for love and for transformation and for change and for the bettering of the relationship. And he's saying, if you want to create the best conditions of possibility for your lover to change, hope, right? see everything they could be. It is not guaranteed success, right? But it is the best conditions you can create for it to grow, right? Does that make sense? Philippe, you have a question. Go ahead. No, okay. All right. So then he continues, right? Therefore, never in unlovingness give up on a person, give up hope for him. For it is possible also, he says, that even the most prodigal son can be saved, that the most embittered enemy can become your friend. It is possible that the love which has turned cold can burn again. Therefore, never give up any man, not even at the last moment. Do not despair. No, hope all things, right? So that's the idea. So let's go a little further now and explore the hope as a force, right? So we've seen what it means. It's a gaze, it's a vision. It's not about solving the problem or imposing an agenda or a solution or a vision of what. It's about seeing what is already there. And as you see what is already there, Kierkegaard is saying that vision actually will have a profound impact. And I want to look at two ways that that vision has an impact. So I'm going to put that in the chat. So the first way that vision has an impact is psychologically. And the second way that vision has an impact is metaphysically. It's getting hot over here. The sun burning on top of me. Okay. Okay. So first thing that we have learned already, right? When we explored the Song of Songs. I don't know if you remember, but do you remember when the woman chose to believe in her love? Remember when we had the lilies situation? And he was all over the place, and she was just kept on affirming, my beloved is mine and I'm his, I'm my beloved and he's mine, right? She was choosing to believe in the love, to believe that it was possible, to believe that there could be a monogamous relationship. And as she was believing, we saw the man beginning to shift, right? And so we saw already in that text. Now I have another very funny story to tell you. Which shows in a way the power of hope. This is an actual true story. I think I have several stories. I have even two stories. I'll start with the first one. We have some time. So before teaching in college, this blessed task that I have been given, I was teaching in elementary school, which was hell, for me at least. It was really not cut out for it. And I had the worst of elementary school, which was 8th grade, which is when they become mutants, and they shift from, animals to, I don't know what they become, but it's a kind of mutation time. And I had 8th graders, and I was teaching them English, of all things, English as a second language. I was in France at the time. And I was in that class. It was a nightmare. And you know how it is, like you see them in the day and you dream about them at night. That was my life. Like they had completely infiltrated every aspect of my life. So there was this kid in there who was particularly difficult. He was a little older than the rest. He was like 14, and he just would create havoc. He was the ringleader, and he got on my nerves so much. So one day, I don't know, I got inspired. It was really not like me to have those inspirations, but I got inspired. I called him to my office, and this is what I told him. I told him, listen, you're the smartest kid in the class. You're actually more advanced than the others in English, which was true. Both of these things were true. But I said it to him. I said, you're actually the smartest kid in the class. You're more advanced than the others. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you alone. I'm not going to ask you questions. I'm not going to even test you because you're actually, the material already. And I said, also, if you're willing, I would appreciate if you could help the others who are struggling since you have an edge. If you feel like it, I would appreciate you kind of being the TA of the class, right? The kid looked at me like I was from the planet, whatever, Pluto. And he wasn't expecting that, right? He was expecting to be, yelled at for being such a horrible influence for the bad in my classroom. But I didn't talk about that at all. I completely neglected to talk about the discipline, the way he was ruining my life in the classroom, the way he was creating chaos. I just focused on, you're a smart kid and I need your help. The next day in class, he didn't say a word. The whole semester, he didn't say a word. And instead, when I would ask a question, he would raise his hand. I mean, what's happening? He would want to, and then he would turn around and help the others. I was like completely I was blown away. I did not know at all about Kierkegaard or this stuff with hope, but I kind of stumbled into it by some miracle. And I realized that this actually works. I saw him in a certain way and he became that. That's the power of hope. When you see someone a certain way and you speak that into their lives, they blossom under that gaze. Now, here's a even more powerful example, and this is actual true story. So this is a bunch of researchers who, from Harvard, let's say, who decided to, research into intellectual development or the development of intelligence and so forth. And so they picked a classroom. It could be anywhere in, some bad high school here in New York City. They picked one of the more difficult schools. And they went to a classroom and they distributed a test. And they said, listen, we are giving an opportunity here for the students who are not in a very good school, but we want to give an opportunity for the brightest of you to actually have a decent education. And so we're going to give you the standardized test, and the 5 top candidates, we are going to put through good schools, and we're going to support your education because clearly you have the talent for it. Okay, the kids take the test. The 5 best ones are chosen. They're put in great, wonderful elite high schools, and then they're paid way through Ivy Leagues, and the 5 become amazing in their field, right? So just, this is an experiment to show, right, when you have proper, it doesn't matter where you come from, if you have proper support, you can make it. So, and everybody thought that was great. That was really nice experiment. Shows, that if with proper support, anyone can make it. Until 10 years later, they revealed what the experiment was really about. And and what they revealed, anybody can guess what they revealed? Who they actually picked?
That's the 5 people with the worst scores.
Yes, it was 5 people with the worst scores. It was the worst students, the least promising students. They made them think that they were geniuses and that they could make it, and they made it, right? So that was what the experiment was about. It's a true story. You can look it up. So you see again here the power of hope, right? And they didn't do anything. They just said, you're the best. And then those kids were like, yeah, I'm the best. Let me show you, right? So this is very powerful. This gaze is very powerful. By the way, the gaze of despair is also very powerful. If you're constantly looking at your beloved like you're a loser, I'm unhappy, you're never gonna make it, I am hope, that's gonna make them into that. But if you shift your gaze, if you give the gaze where you are seeing everything they could be, if you're seeing their true self and you're speaking that and you're nurturing that, there is no telling, right? This can actually lead to profound transformation. The person will naturally blossom in the light of that gaze, right? Let me write this down, right? The person will naturally blossom under your gaze, or they'll wither, right? You can also make people wither under your gaze, right? Whatever gaze you choose, you can kill someone, or you can empower them to become everything that they truly are. And so that's the first thing we learn, is that hope actually is a very powerful force, right? But it goes beyond that. Right, Kierkegaard now leading into the metaphysical reason. That was the psychological reason, but now leading into the metaphysical reason. Kierkegaard is telling us that when we hope, actually something deeper is going on. When we hope, according to Kierkegaard, we begin tapping into that source we talked about. So how does that work? That's very strange. So first, let's read the text, and then I will explain. So I'm on page 233. And I'm in the second section. I'm in the middle of the second section, where it says, hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. So wave at me when you found it. 233, second section, right in the middle. Hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. If you have it, just wave at me. Anybody?
Sorry, hope is what?
Hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. Middle of second section, page 233. So as soon as you have it. Okay, thank you, Suresh. Okay, great. Okay, so this is interesting, right? He's saying here, hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. So what does the eternal mean? What does the temporal mean, right? Eternal and temporal. These are two new words. So let me explain. So the eternal, first of all, has nothing to do with eternal life or some Christian notion of the afterlife, right? That's not the eternal. The eternal for Kierkegaard is this dimension within us, which is completely distinct from our daily life, which is transcendent, which is in a way divine, right? This part within us is the love within us that never dies, right? That source of love. That's the eternal. So when he talks about the eternal, he's talking about the dimension here and now. It's not the afterlife, it's not God, it's not something after you die. This is something here and now that you can tap into. We can tap into the realm of the gods right now. We can tap into the abode of the divine right now. We can tap into eternal love right now. And temporal, of course, he means simply our daily lives, right? The daily grind of our daily lives, the difficulties, everything we're encountering, all the problems we have right now, them, me, all the problems. That's the temporal, right? The realm of temporality. And so he's saying here, hope is a bridge between the temporal and the eternal. In other words, when you choose to hope and you cultivate that vision, what is going to happen is not only the outside is going to be renewed, but you will be renewed from within. Cultivating that gaze will not tire you out, it will rejuvenate you. Let me write that in the chat, right? Cultivating the gaze of hope will never tire you out. On the contrary, it will renew you from within. Right? Now, here are many things you can do that will tire you out, right? Suppose you're going back to the addict partner, right? So if you're dealing with them and you're like trying to convince them to go to rehab, or you're trying to convince them to change, or you're, talking to the therapist, trying to find solutions, right? This will tire you out. All of these actions will tire you out. But cultivating the gaze of hope, continuing to see everything that could be, just the vision, try it and you will see that instead of becoming more and more weary, you will become more and more excited, more and more joyful, more and more expectant that something will happen, right? So actually cultivating that gaze actually renews us from within. Doesn't only renew the outside, also renews the inside. And that's what Kierkegaard means when he says hoping is composed of the eternal and temporal. As you're cultivating love, or hope rather, as you're cultivating hope, you are in a way becoming renewed. And that's what it means to tap into the source. At that moment, you have tapped into that source, unbeknownst to yourself, right? The more, it's like a tree, by the way, you know this, the more the branches grow, what happens to the roots? As the branches go up in the sky, what happens to the roots? Anybody know?
Grows deeper into the ground.
Exactly, right? As the tree rises, the roots deepen. As you cultivate hope, as you bear the fruits of hope, your roots will deepen within yourself, and one day you will tap into that source, right? So the point of access of the source is through the practice of hope. As you practice hope, hope has to become a practice, right? It has to become a decision you make, a way of seeing. As you cultivate that gaze, you are at the same time connecting, unbeknownst to yourself, to this deeper source of love. And at that point, there is no limit to what could happen, right? What will emerge from you, from that gaze, can be absolutely extraordinary, right, and life-changing. So that's the metaphysical aspect, right? So Kierkegaard is saying it's not just psychological reason. There is actually a deeper metaphysical reason why there is a change, because when you hope, you're connecting two realms. You're connecting the eternal, where everything, all the resources are found of love, of peace, of joy, to the temporal, which is where the problem is. You're kind of, right, connecting them together and creating the possibility for one to influence the other, right? Through hope, the eternal enters the temporal. There, that's the idea. Let me write it down. Through hope, the eternal infiltrates, right? Penetrates the temporal. That's how you do it. I can say it differently. Through hope. Wait, what happened? Where to go? Ah, there it is. Yeah. Through hope, the source of love, right, is infiltrates again the temporal, your reality. Okay, am I making sense? Wave at me if you're following what I'm saying, or have I lost everyone? Okay, good. Okay, so we have to look at one last thing, and I just want to be out of the sun so bad. I feel like we need to there. Gonna move. All right. This has been one of the most uncomfortable teaching situations I've ever had. Not because of you, but because my computer and everything else that was happening. Okay. So any questions so far on this notion of hope, on the transformative power of hope? Because I want to go to the last part now, which is love is never put to shame. So any comments or questions or reservations you might have? Yes, Davido.
My question now, my question before was, how is this different from Kant's conception of practical love? Because it seems similar to me, and that I know that they're supposed to be opposing philosophies.
No, you're right. This is exactly the same as practical love, except for Kierkegaard, there's a result. And Kant, he doesn't care about the result. Kant says, you do it because it's the right thing to do. Kierkegaard here is more seductive in his approach. He's saying, if you choose to love in that way, there is a possibility of renewal, right? There is a possibility of transformation. Kant would never say that because he wouldn't want us to have an incentive. Kant doesn't want us to do the right thing because of the results, right? So he's not going to talk about the results. But Kierkegaard is an existentialist. He knows human nature. Nobody is going to just do things because it's the right thing to do, right? So he's giving us, and he's right. He's saying acting in this way has an impact, and we need to know this, right? So that's the main difference. But it's the same movement. You're right. Practical love chooses no matter what. Hope chooses no matter what. But here, practical love also is more about you are doing the right thing. Hope is, and you're doing the right thing. You're not really seeing the other. You're just staying, right? Here, this is different. You're connecting. You're seeing. You're drawing out, right? Do you see a little bit the difference, Davidov? Where's
Yeah,
Davidov?
thank you.
Yes, okay, good. All right. Any other points? That was a good point. Thank you. Any other point or issue you want to talk about before we move to the last part? Okay. So now let's move to the last part, which is love hopes all things, but is never put to shame, right? Love is never put to shame. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. What does that mean? Because that's strange. So this is actually, Kierkegaard is realistic, right? He realizes that we can hope in this way and we can nurture the environment of transformation, but it doesn't mean that the transformation will take place, right? We have done the best possible thing we could for our beloved, but it doesn't always end well. He's a realist on that. He knows that even if you nurture hope, even if you nurture this vision, even if you continue to gaze on the person like this, doesn't necessarily mean they will shift. Sometimes, yes, it will help, but sometimes it won't help. And so at that point, a rupture is inevitable, right? Very often it fails. The vision of hope does not produce any fruit, does not produce any change, and we are forced to part ways. And at that moment, the temptation is to feel I wasted all this time on this person. Right? I'm sure a lot of you come out of a breakup and you're like, I wasted all my emotions, I wasted all this time, and you feel ashamed, you feel stupid, right, for believing in this person, and then nothing happened. And Kierkegaard is going to check you on this. He's going to say, no, don't be ashamed. Do not feel like an idiot right now, because true love is never put to shame. So this is intriguing. Why? So I'm going to ask you, what do you think? Why is it that having done all of this, you have hoped in the person, you have created the right environment, and it didn't work, you've lost a few years, right? Why is it that Kierkegaard can tell us, you are not a fool, you should not be ashamed, do not regret any of this? Why do you think he can tell us that? In other words, what have we think we have lost things, right? We think we have lost time and wasted our emotions. And Kierkegaard is saying, on the contrary, You have gained time and you have gained on your emotions. So what does he mean by that? Philippe, can you help us?
Is it because he believed that in hoping you are tapping into your eternal and therefore you are gaining something because you are actually learning to also in a way love yourself and also hope for the future. I mean, not the future, but
Okay.
the potential in the other.
You said it all. You said it. I was expecting us to stumble a little more before we got to that point, but Philippe got us right there, a shortcut. So yes, Philippe, you're absolutely right. Let me explain. Let me develop what you said. It's true that you lost the lover, but you found love. That's the difference, right? Let me write this down. Yes, you lost the lover, right? But in hoping like you did, right? You have found, in fact, love. In other words, you have found within yourself capacities for love that you didn't even know existed. You have become a masterful lover. You never knew you could love like that, did you? Right? You never knew you could stick it out like that, did you? Until you went through this ordeal and this trial with this person. And now you have emerged from the relationship. Yes, you are alone, but you have become somebody capable of loving so deeply and so powerfully, right? So in a way, you've lost the lover, but you have become, right? You have become a lover of the highest degree, right? And so you have, like Felipe was saying, you have learned to love in a way that you didn't think possible, right? Let me write this down. You have learned to love in a way you didn't think possible for yourself. You have enlarged your own heart, right? Whoever has you next is lucky, right? Because I've experienced this, right? Before loving in that, before going through this ordeal, right, of loving in that way, I was a very selfish person, right? I was not a great lover. It is the ordeal that brought me to this. I realized, oh my goodness, I didn't know I was capable of this, right? I didn't know I could love in this way. I didn't know I had it in me. And now, we know that the next person that comes along is going to be actually quite privileged, right, to be with someone who knows how to love in that way, right? So we should never regret the time that we spent loving someone, because the time we spent loving someone is the time that we became loving. Right? It's the time that we became more loving. So let me write this down, right? Never regret the time spent loving someone. I mean, of course, in addition to the impact you might have had or still could have on the person, there's also the fact that you've learned to love. You've become more loving, right? And that, in a way, even though you lost the lover, and you have gained, you have learned, you have acquired the capacity to love. And this makes you wealthier now, having lost the lover, than before, right? You are never, if you truly have loved someone, you can never be robbed of anything by anyone, because you are, in a way, you have become abundant. You are abundance itself, right? So you don't really, yes, you've lost a person, but you have found love, right? You have tasted love in your own behavior, right? So in that sense, I think that that's what he means when he says, right, we are never put to shame. We lost the lover, but we have learned to love in a way that we never thought possible. And that in itself is such a gift that we are given. Even if the relationship fumbles and dries up and doesn't succeed, we have been given the gift of love, which we can then offer to others in a much deeper way than before. So never regret loving someone, because in loving someone, you have enlarged your own capacity to love, and it makes you a better lover for the next person, right? Or maybe for that person if they come around, you never know. Right? Okay, any questions on anything we did with Kierkegaard? Any objections or things you want to discuss that you're not comfortable with? Okay, great. All right, so quick overview of what's next. So Thursday is the last day of class. we are doing 2 texts, so you have a little bit of intense work now. We're doing Buber and Irigaray, so you need to prepare both texts. So you have all of Wednesday and Thursday morning to do that. So make sure you've handed in 1 reading assignment for Buber and 1 reading assignment for Irigaray, as well as 1 audio for Buber and 1 audio for Irigaray. It was a very crunched up class. I'm aware that we crunched up things a lot this particular semester. Yeah. I do feel for you. So you have 2 texts to prepare, and then on Thursday, the first hour, we'll go straight into the text. We're not gonna take time for the discussion. We'll go straight into Buber, first hour, and second hour straight into Irigaray, and I'll just lecture on both texts, and then we'll be good. Then this weekend, you have a test on Rumi and Kant, and then next, I don't know, what did I say? Thursday, we'll be do the test and essay on the 3, Buber, Kierkegaard, and Irigaray. So you have about 5 days to prepare that. Filippo, you had a question? You're muted.
So for the final project, is that also due on the Thursday?
Yeah, final project is due on the Thursday also. So that, remember, final project is you're reading preface, introduction, and 2 chapters of your choice. And then you're writing me a response, what you liked, what you didn't like, right, about the book. Single spaced 1 page. So that's what, and I'll write all this on Blackboard, but I'm just saying it for those of you who are not on Blackboard. Okay, Castellanos, yes?
Wait, so you said that everything is due on Thursday or just the assignments, the tests are due later?
Everything, not this Thursday, right? Next Thursday.
Oh,
Everything.
okay.
Yeah, that's the last day, because then I have to put in the grades. So good. All right, guys, so you can go. If some of you, I want to see whoever I wanted to see, right? And then whoever has questions also can stay, but the rest of you can go. I'm gonna stop the recording also.